Hello and welcome to another late night talk. My guest tonight is fantasy author Steve McHugh. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, internet people.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Who's watching around
the world?
Yes.
Yes.
This is the third one of these I've done. So if you haven't gone back, watch them yet, go back and watch the ones. And also subscribe to the channel so you can get updates on more late night talks. There. Pitch over. Right. So let's get to some questions. Here's a good one to start off with. How did you get into reading fantasy, and then how did you get into writing it?
Oh, reading is, that was to do with my teacher at school. My English teacher, his name was Mr. Piercy, and every week we had to read a book for like an English project, and we had to write what we read and a little bit about it. And I did like 6 weeks, and every single one of them was one of the Ian Livingstone, Steve Jackson, Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Yes.
They were great. Loved them.
Yep.
And my teacher, Mr. Pierce, he took me to one side and said, Steve, I'm glad you found your niche, but you need to read something that isn't a Choose Your Own Adventure book. And I said, oh, all right. Then he said, go next door to the library and grab any two books you like, and then come back, and those will be your next books. And I picked up Terry Pratchett's Men at Arms, and a Gemmell book. I can't think what one it was. And I devoured them, and promptly went down the library and devoured everything else that they had by them, and Stephen King and Dean Koontz and Anne Rice and anybody else I could find.
Yeah.
And that was it. I was hooked. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to read everything I could find, and that's pretty much why I love reading fantasy and science fiction and horror, and why I ended up writing it. I just read what they wrote and was like, this is what I want to do. And that was that.
That's what I'll be when I grow up, a writer.
Yeah. And then I did bugger all for years. I was one of these people who just said, one day I'm going to be a writer. And I didn't write it. I just wrote bits.
Right.
Yeah, and then I turned 25 and my oldest daughter was born, and I was like, okay, now it's shit or get off the pot time, really. And that's when I kind of started to take it seriously.
So what drew you to urban fantasy? Did you start reading a lot of that and then think, oh, this is different and contemporary, but fantasy? And
yeah, I read Hellblazer a lot.
Yes.
And loved Hellblazer. And then from Hellblazer, I kind of got into reading Jim Butcher and the first few Anita Blake books, and stuff like that. But Hellblazer was like, yeah, I could write a book about magic and stuff, but in modern day. And that's sort of where my urban fantasy. Weirdly enough, I don't read an awful lot of urban fantasy. I find. I don't know if it's because I write it, I don't want to read it and then be like, oh, that's a really good idea. I'm going to pinch that, or subconsciously pinch it anyway. So I tend to not read a lot of urban fantasy, but I read a lot of fantasy and science fiction, things like that. But I still read a lot of comics, and especially hell, anything with Constantine in it is an automatic read, I think.
Right, yeah.
I think he's one of my favourite characters ever. That was the first character I realised that the hero can be an absolute bastard.
Yes. Yeah. Have you read the Mike Carey urban fantasy books, the Felix Castor ones? Yeah,
they were excellent. Wonderful. I remember seeing Mike at a convention a few years ago and basically telling him to write the last one because they'd finished and there was a cliffhanger. Like,
I've done
man,
that. Every time I see him, I say, Mike, I'm going to ask you that question again. He goes, what question? I said, when are you going to write the last Felix Castor book? And he goes, oh, yeah. Well, we're talking about it. And then he does something else. And then he kind of gets distracted. Like he puts out The Girl with All the Gifts. And that's brilliant. It's done really well. Like, do another one. Oh, I'll put Castor back. And then he does something else. And then Book of Coley. Oh, it's a trilogy. I better do that then. So I don't know when we'll get the last Castor book.
I'm hoping we do, because that left on a huge cliffhanger, and I loved those books. They were essentially Constantine.
Yes.
But outside of a DC universe, he was allowed to do what he wanted. And I mean, they were both from Liverpool. They were both very similar. They had very similar traits.
Yeah, definitely.
Which, considering he was writing Hellblazer at the time that he wrote the first book, I think, or just around that time, is not overly surprising that he had stories that he couldn't write for Hellblazer, so he kind of turned it into his own thing. I'm not saying that's what he did.
No,
but
not at all.
Reading them, you get the impression that this is Constantine, and I'm fine with that because his Constantine run, his Hellblazer run, sorry, was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then I started looking at your back catalogue, and this is what I've seen so far. You've done 7 books in the Hellequin Chronicles, 3 in the Avalon Chronicles, and 3 in the Rebellion Chronicles, and the 3rd book of that comes out this December and wraps up the whole kind of thing for now.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask this question, but Justin also asked it, and he said that when you first wrote Crimes Against Magic, the first book, did you have a plan for where it would go, or were you just going to write one and see?
I did have a plan. I originally had this huge plan, this sprawling kind of like 20-book epic kind of thing.
Jim Butcher style.
Yeah, like properly just massive numbers of books. And then it got to about book 5, and I was like, right, half of these plots are just the same plot in different places. So this is silly. Can't write 20 books where I'm like, this is totally different to the last book, but it's nothing a lot different to the last book at all. And a lot of them started merging into one another, and then I got to the last book of the Hellequin Chronicles, and my publisher said, we know that you want to do this with this character next, but we'd like to relaunch it with a new number 1. Can you finish this series? And I said yes, which was probably a bit foolish, because then I got lots of people yelling at me because book 7 finishes on a bit of a cliffhanger. If it's not a huge spoiler to say that book 7 does finish in a bit of a cliffhanger, that's not resolved until the first book of the Rebellion Chronicles. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. That's fine. I will do that. I will end it there and then do this. And I'm sure people will be not mad at me. People were mad at me. People were real mad. So yeah, I did have a huge kind of arc in mind. I do have ideas for more future stories. But some of the stuff that was originally going to be a full-length book, I've turned into a novella, and it suits the novella format quite well. So yeah, I quite enjoyed writing the big long epic, but I don't know if I want to do another big long 13-book epic. I don't want to be known as that guy. Oh, he writes these massive sprawling epic stories, mostly because they're really hard to remember all the bits you did in the first few books when you get to the last few books.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Trilogies are hard enough. When it comes to like book 12, you start to be like, what was the colour of their hair? Sort of thing.
You need like a fan wiki, someone to make a wiki for you.
Yeah. I have an Excel spreadsheet, and even occasionally I'll go on it and I'll go, I left that blank. Oh, Jesus Christ, what did I do? Yeah, there's a lot of that. So no, but I did plan on a huge sprawling epic. Just anyway, it worked out that well that my publisher just let me, basically, which was nice.
Did you ever need like a break between books? Because I know Jim Butcher, people said, oh, why do you write faster? And he's like, sometimes I need a break from Dresden. I have to go and do something else. Otherwise, I'm just going to kill him and end the series.
Yeah. I would write a book and then I would do nothing. I'd write a book in about 3 months, and then I'd do nothing for a month, basically.
Yeah.
Well, it did nothing to do with that book anyway. I'd write little bits of other stuff. I'd work on other books and other worlds and stuff, and then I'd go back to it when the edits came back in 6 weeks, 2 months later, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But usually, once the book was done and all the edits were done, and they'd say, well, we don't need a book from you for 6 months, I'd be like, right, taking a month off. I'm going to go and play computer games and spend time with my family, and I'll be back in a month and write the other one. I got down to the that I can write a 100,000 word book in about 2.5 months. So
wow,
I had it down pretty good.
Really fast. That's really fast.
Yeah, I write about, if without pushing myself, I write about 10,000 words a week.
Right.
If I push myself, I could probably do 20,000 words a week. I did 1 month. I wrote 100,000 words in a month. I'm never doing it again because it was hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the most I ever wrote in one day was about 9,000 words, and I'm not doing that again either because that sucked. Maybe less than that, but that's 8,000 maybe, but it did suck. I don't think I wrote again the whole week. And the thing is that I don't normally know what happens either, so I kind of plod along a bit and just kind of see what happens. I know where the book ends.
Yep.
I know how the book starts. I know the main plot points of the book.
Right.
And everything else I just make up as I go along.
Oh, wow. Wow. Proper freestyle.
Yeah, I all of the world building is done with an nth. Like, I've got notebooks full of world building and character creation and you know, stuff that's never going to make it onto the page at any point. Like what people were doing 45 years ago and all this kind of stuff. That's never even in the book. But I've tried to make a timeline and stick to it, and my brain after about 10 minutes doing it goes, no, let's do this instead, and it drives me potty, so I don't do it anymore.
Well, if it works and you can do it and you can sustain it, that's the thing for me.
Yeah.
I've tried before where I kind of have a daily word count of 1,000 and a monthly word count of 20. That's my kind of goal, and if I go over, great. A couple of months ago, I did 36 in a month, which is a lot for me, nearly double. But I almost burnt myself out, and I had to take a week off because I thought, you know, that was really good, but there's no way I can do that again because it's going to cripple me. And do you never get burned out from working at such a ferocious pace?
Yes, which is probably why I take time off after writing the book.
Yeah.
Once I've written the book and sent it off, and I do tend to take a couple of weeks off and recharge and chill out. And it's worked out quite well this year because the book will be finished and then the PS5 comes out. So that's worked out rather well for me for the last 2 weeks of November because I'm not doing any work. I will be doing as little as I can possibly get away with. And then I usually take time off over Christmas and New Year, like a month basically, Christmas to beginning of January. And then when the kids are off from school, I take some time off as well.
Yeah.
So and I don't work weekends. I don't write weekends if I can get away with it. I like to be able to not have to say to my kids, "Can you all just be shh for 5 minutes," so that I can write.
He's working.
Shh. I don't want them to be that. Oh God, Dad's working again. I'll be very quiet. And actually, I don't really need quiet to work because I put my music on and just kind of crack on with it. I try not to work when they're home from school. Although, when considering they've been home from school for like 5 months this year, I actually ended up needing to have to write before I lost my mind. I am not made to be a teacher.
Right. Yeah.
I do not have the patience to explain in very simple terms things which I just know and they don't know because they're 8 and 10.
Right.
And my teenager knows more than I do because she's like a bloody genius. And so the writing was my escape, I think, in 2020 for a lot of people as well, I assume.
Oh yeah.
But I think that we've all needed that, so that's worked out, I think.
Hopefully, yeah. So your path to publication is pretty different from the usual one. When I talk to people, it's all about they write a novel, they hunt for an agent, and then they hunt for a publisher, and it can take years and years and years. But tell me about your path, because it's not typical at all.
No, my path's a bit weird.
Tell me.
I wrote a book called For Past Sins, which will never be published because it's rubbish. And I sent it out to agents, and I got lots of very nice rejections from, "Oh, well done, you wrote a book. Congratulations." And then I wrote Crimes Against Magic and sent that out to agents. And then at some point doing it, a bunch of friends of mine, authors, all self-published. And I put the book into the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award, which at the time, I don't even know if they still do it anymore, but at the time, the winner got a deal with Penguin, I think, or Orbit or something like that. And and some cash. And I got to the semi-finals, and then I lost, which I'm fine about, and don't hold a grudge about it or anything.
No.
And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to self-publish this, see what happens. And I self-published it, and it did all right. You know, that first month, I sold 28 books in the first month. April 2012, it came out. I sold 28 books, and I was over the moon. I was like, 28 people have bought my book. That is superb. And then by the end of the year, I published the second book, and that 28 was now thousands of books. And the beginning of 2013, I got a phone call from who I thought were people taking the piss, to ask if I wanted to work with a publisher and come over so that we could work together, and they would republish the first 2 books and I'd publish the rest with them. I was like, yeah, sure. Who you are. This is clearly a joke. And his name is David Pomerico. He now works for Harper Voyager as their commissioning editor, I think.
Right.
Developmental editor. And yeah, it just kind of published with them, and it just went from strength to strength to strength. And then the third book came out, and someone said, "Do you have an agent?" And I'm like, "I do not." I should do that, because honestly, when you get contracts from publishers and you read them and you go in, "This is in English, right? You're sure this is in English?" Because it's just whoosh.
You sound like the words, but when they put them together, you go,
yeah. And there's bits that seem to contradict other bits in the same, and you're like, I don't know what I'm saying. I don't understand this at all. So I sent the books around to a few agents, and I got lots of, "Thank you very much. It's very nice of you, but we're not taking you people, or it's not really something I'm interested in." And a friend of mine's agent, Paul Lucas at Gentler and Nesbitt, he said, why don't you go to Paul? He's looking for people. And I did. And Paul rang me up, and we spent an hour talking about whiskey and computer games and films. And at the end of it, we were like, we get on really well. We should work together. Yeah, that's a really good idea. Let's do that. And then I had an agent, and he's been my agent since 2014 now, about 6 years now, nearly. And yeah, and the publishing just kept on going and ticking over. And most people, I think, do it the opposite way to the way I did it. Yeah, it worked out well in the end, but I'm the first to admit that it's kind of a roundabout, weird way to get published and get an agent, and do the publishing bit first. It's a bit strange, but yeah, it worked out okay so far. So far, touch wood.
And it's 47 North, is that right?
It is, yeah. They are the science fiction, fantasy, and horror arm of Amazon Publishing.
Yeah.
They also have Thomas and Mercer, which is their crime imprint, and a couple of others as well. And they've published like George R.R. Martin and a bunch of really big name fantasy authors. And yeah, they've always been really very supportive and a good publisher. Yeah, it's weird. It's been I've been with them now for nearly 7 years, and it's just absolutely flown by. It's been a bit of a bonkers ride. It's not been anything I ever expected being an author would be, if I'm honest.
Yeah, how so?
I was expecting just hiding away in a hovel, writing all the time, and then people yelling at you because it's not on time and all the rest of it. But actually, it's been completely the opposite. It's been lovely. It's been a really nice, it's worked out well. That the thing I wanted to do, I love doing.
Yeah.
It was the thing that when I was a kid and when I was in my early 20s, I wanted to do it. And it's turned out that the thing I as a kid was like, this is what I want. This is my dream job. And it's turned out not only do I get to do my dream job, but my dream job actually rocks. So yeah, I like that. Not many people get to say that. As everyone keeps telling me, when I left my job full time, I must have been told about 45 people. Not many people get to leave their job and do what they love. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Are you all miserable here?
Probably they are, yeah.
Yes, they probably were. Having worked there, yes, is the answer to that.
Yeah. When I told my dad I want to be a writer, he's like, "Well, that's nice, but we'll get you another job, a proper job first, and then, get you some actual skills, and then you can work on writing in parallel," which is what I did for the longest time. Worked in parallel, and I still work part-time now, but I'm self-employed, so it's a bit different.
Yes.
But, yeah.
It's yeah. I mean, I've done this full time now for 5 years.
Right.
And so I worked full time and wrote full time for 5 years, and then have done this full time for 5 years. And looking back on it, I have no idea how I wrote anything and worked full time. I must have literally slept about 2 hours a day, because there's no other way I can think of how I did it, and don't understand how my brain allowed me to do it. But yeah, no, it's worked out, so that's nice. I'm not going to complain.
I think I had a lot less sleep when I was doing it. When I was working full time and writing, I would come home, have dinner, and then write, and just write until late into the night, and then just collapse into bed. Get up the next day, go to work, and come back and do that. And then I'd be writing on the weekends too, to try and make up, and progress and keep doing it. And it's weird.
Yeah, that was basically it. It was every spare minute I had to write. So I'm glad that that's kind of not the case now.
And it's different now. Like, we're both a bit older. I think we're of a similar age. But the fact that you've got family now, and you can't just spend an whole evening sat in your room writing. It's like, well, I can't just do that, because I've got people I have to go and look after and deal with. And you can't just go, well, no, when you're on your own, or you've got someone who's more understanding, then that's fine. But when things change, you can't just do it the same pace. So
yeah, my first book came out a couple of months before my youngest was born. So yeah, I think if that I was doing that now, it would be much more difficult, much different now.
Yeah.
Work full time, have a young family, and have to try and write full time. Then I had a young family then, but there were only 2 of them, and then the third one came along. And the good thing about doing night feeds is, with Harley at least, was she woke up, she drank, she had a feed, and then she went back to bed, and there was no bother. And I was like, "This is great. I'm just going to work. I'm just going to do some work. Thank you very much." So night feeds were like, "Yeah, that's fine. You just sleep. Brilliant. Thank you."
Yeah. It's the things we could do when we're younger, we just can't do it. Can't do it now. Not the same pace,
No.
Going out, you should start at 10 o'clock. Now I'm like, what? No.
Yeah. 10 o'clock, I'm thinking, can't watch a whole film now. So
no, it's too late. It's too late now to do a whole film. Getting on. Anyway, so moving on, I'll talk about characters, because I don't think I've talked about anybody about this yet. So where do you start with building characters? Because when I did Battle Mage, I had the main character already set up, but then I needed to fill certain roles. And so I kind of thought about that, and thought about the kind of person, and then thought about the story. Then based upon that, I built the characters. But how did you do it with that first book, obviously? And then you've built, obviously the world's grown massively from that, but where did you begin? And then how did you bring characters in as the story, progressed?
The first character, Nate, I kind of got down as good as I could possibly get in my head, until I could just switch him on and off. And because it's from his point of view, that made my life a little easier, because everybody else is then kind of seen through his eyes.
Yeah.
With characters now, I tend to just, I don't know, it's really strange. I tend to think, okay, I need this character to do this. This is the character I need to have, who does this, or has this job, or is has this role within this book, be it a friend or an adversary or whatever. And then the first thing I do is decide on their name. And once I've got a name in my head, I can figure out, it's weird, the name almost builds the personality around it a little bit. So
Yeah, yeah.
If I know that they're going to be a bad guy, then I'm like, right, I want a name that will fit that person. So I'll find a name, and then that sort of shifts me where I need to go in the personality.
Mm-hmm.
I find there's an online naming resource, fantasy naming generator, and literally I'm like, right, where is this person from? Now, if they're from our world, okay, let's say they're from the Scandinavian countries.
Yeah.
Right, let's just refresh until I get a name from the Scandinavian countries I like. That's a good name. That fits the idea of what I'm doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes I'll look up that name to see what it means, because I don't want a name that's in there that's just like, okay, that's completely the opposite of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And then the characters just kind of form naturally in my head. I'll start to think, well, why would they do this? Why would they want, are they the bad guy because they want money? Do they want power? Is it revenge? Yeah, I have a character who comes into the Hellequin books. His name's Remy, and he's a 3.5-foot fox man. And he was a French aristocrat who pissed off a witch's coven, and they tried to kill him and turn him into a fox and give him to an English hunt. And instead, the spell went wrong, and all of their souls got dumped inside Remy, who's now a fox man. And he puts up with this by swearing at everybody and threatening to stab people. And that was it. That was all I knew about Remy. He's sarcastic, antagonistic, pain in the ass, and it just formed from there. It just came. Well, what's the sort of thing he would say? He would just tell everybody to fuck off, and so from there, it's kind of formed how he would react to any one person at any one time. I like writing characters. I like creating characters. I like that kind of like, this is who I want this to be. Let's see what I can do with him, sort of thing. And it's just a natural in my head thing. A little bit like stories itself. I think I'll just have an idea, and then it's a similar sort of thing. I'll have an idea of something, and then my brain will start thinking about it, and then I'll have at least a beginning or an end or something of a story. And characters are the same. I'll have a trait, or I'll watch a film and I'll be like, yeah, that's a good idea. And then the character will form from there. And it feels like an organic process.
Yeah.
I think that's, to me, if I started being like, right, I need him to do this, I need him to do this, I need him to do this, I need him to be this kind of person, it wouldn't feel like an organic process. It would feel like I'm ticking boxes.
Yeah, yeah.
In my head, it would feel like I'm ticking boxes, whether or not it is on the page. Sometimes it hasn't worked, and there have been characters who I've written, and by the time I've written the book and I've read it and I've sent it off, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, they're not going to be in another book.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. There are characters I've written into a book, and I've liked the character, and I've just kind of gone, you know, I have characters who I find more interesting who play a similar role.
Right.
Don't use you again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find I have done that a few times. I have killed off characters that I'm like, you know what, I've got nothing else for you to do.
You served your purpose.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. You have done what you needed to do. Thank you very much for your service. Goodbye. And but that doesn't happen very often. Normally, I know they're going to die from word 1 of the book.
Have fans complained about you killing characters? Because I've had that. I've had people come up to me and be like, I can't believe you did that. I'm like, what? Oh dear. Well, okay.
I've had fans say, please don't kill this character. Please don't kill this character. Please be nice to this guy. And I'm like, you've read my books. I'm not nice to any of the characters that I like. So if they're heroic characters, there's a good chance that horrible things are going to happen to them. But yeah, no, I've had a few death scenes where I've had messages from people like, you made me cry. Why? And I'm like, yes, that's right. I made you cry. That's what I like to hear. Yeah, no, to be fair, I think I've had a few people, but not too many, thankfully, yet. we'll see. The last book's not out yet, and they haven't read what happens, so I might have to go into hiding in January.
So that'll be the third one of the Rebellion Chronicles.
Mm.
So then, my next question is what's next? You said recently today that you've been working on something for about 5 years, but is that sort of whilst you've been doing these other books, you've been making notes and having ideas and jotting stuff down?
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't tell as much, but I take it's not in the same world and it's something quite different.
No, I this year I wrote a book in a completely new world. It's urban fantasy again, and it was just I had this idea, and I had the idea at kind of the beginning of the year, and it was something that's formed over a couple of years, from just a plain fantasy, plain kind of crime thriller kind of Jack Reacher-esque kind of book, to an urban fantasy. So I've written that, and I'm hoping to finish it this week. But the epic fantasy, I've been working on that for 5 years ish now. It's been a long time coming. I've been making notes and world building and changing things and doing the timeline of the world and the characters and the magic system and changing kind of the main character hasn't really changed in who she is.
Yeah.
There's two main characters. There's a man and a woman. The man's changed quite a lot, but the woman hasn't really changed at all. Just her situation has changed.
Right.
As I've been trying to figure out the best situation to dump her in at the beginning of the book and make her life as miserable as possible as soon as possible. So that's what I'm planning. And I've got to write a novella as well, but a novella's only 30,000 words, so that's not awful. I'll probably do that by the end of the year. So in amongst other bits and pieces. So I'm quite looking forward to writing. I've never written a epic fantasy before.
Right.
So I quite like the idea of making my own stuff so people can't tell me it's wrong.
Do you get that with the urban fantasy?
I've had people tell me that I've used the wrong type of gun, or the wrong type of ammunition for the wrong type of gun,
right?
Or that there's a road that I've written about that doesn't exist. That road, and I'm like, well, it exists in my world.
Yep.
There's no magic in this world either, so that version's a bit different.
Yeah.
But someone can't say that mountain's not there. Well, it is because I made it up.
Yeah.
So I'm quite looking forward to that. I have had people say, especially guns is a big one, especially if I've written a gun wrong.
Right.
I 100% find out about it within days of the book going out. And the thing is that I do research it and check it and stuff. And I have friends of mine who are in the military and all the rest of it.
Yep.
And usually what happens is it will be a real thing, and I'll be like, I don't want to use the exact real thing, so I'll just put like a letter on the end of it or something.
Right.
And people are like, that's not a real thing. Well, no, it's not a real thing. I've made it up.
It's not supposed to be.
Manufacturer. I've given it a real name, but it's a made-up gun or sword or whatever. But that's just what it just comes with the territory of the job, I think.
I wish I could tell you don't get it with the epic fantasy. You still get, well, actually, with archery, you wouldn't do that. And I think I said I got the thing wrong with making weapons and being in a forge. I got that way wrong, and I spent a day making a sword, and I learned how wrong I was. And the smiths told me, and I'm like, okay, I've done my research, but it wasn't enough. Going forward, I'll just do better, and that's all I can do.
Yeah,
with them.
That's really all you can do. I think. We all do our research, and we all try to do research as much as possible. But there's always going to be those things that slip through the cracks, and we don't get it 100% right. We are as a rule, jack of all trades, master of none. I have vast amount of completely useless and pointless information in my head about things that no one will ever need to know about. But I needed it for one sentence in one book 5 years ago. So, and also in the UK, we don't really have that kind of gun culture.
No.
So that's not really a thing. So we've got that a bit different. But yeah, I do try to get them right most of the time. I don't needlessly. I don't be like, no, screw all of you. I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah.
That would be weird.
Yeah. Well, as you say, we try our best, but we can't always get it 100%. So
we can't get it right all the time.
No.